I would like to make it simple this morning because I have very little time. I'm sure that you understand that this is a vast, very vast subject which we could spend a day on, or 2 days, or even a week or a year. But I will try and keep it as short as possible. And I've chosen one particular slide which will help me give you a couple of key facts about the French culture. As I understand, you all wish to come to France, you want to create a business, or you already have a business, and one of your most important targets is to create synergy between your cultural positions and the French cultural positions, because otherwise it just doesn't work out. We did some work for the Chamber of Commerce between France and Germany, and I can only tell you, please take care of this subject, because they are already losing out 40% of possible common turnover, which amounts up to 40 billion euros a year. So you see, this is a very, very important subject. It is not something nice to have, but it is something that you really need to take care of. So what I'm going to do now is show you one of our most creative tools which we are using for recruitment and team building processes, and particularly also as a basis for coaching, and which gives you an idea about cultural positions for all cultures. It is a 14-dimension a spider, what we call a spider, but really it's called the NIP. It's a National Intercultural Profile, on which you can, of course, lay a personal intercultural profile or a team intercultural profile. And I will run you through the dimensions, giving you the key facts every time about France linked to this position. So first of all, when we have a look, maybe we can go just one step further now. Okay, wonderful. You see France is appearing on the scene. When we talk about the first dimension, for example, you realize that all the cultures, all the countries in this world somehow and somewhere are fixed on this continuum, one pole of which is called the universalist pole, and the other one is called the particularist pole. Now, what it means in very, very simple terms is that the universalist cultures are always tempted to find one solution for everybody. And it is starting from one truth, and it is one product without making publicity for particular products. You can imagine them wherever you go, they are the same. You recognize them very easily. Now, what you see here, when you look at the position of France, the average professional profile for France, you see somewhere in the middle, France is between particularist and universalist cultures. Particularists meaning, of course, that you are looking at individual facts, that you are taking into consideration, for example, concretely in France, who you are working with. Who you are working with is very important, and you take into consideration the situation, the given facts about the situation, maybe the network of your client, maybe the network of your supplier, your own network, and you are being very, very careful because before you go and announce one single truth, or before you announce one single fact, or to make it quite plastic, before, for example, you create one single contract to cover everything that looks more or less the same. If I may put my French disquette for today in my head, this is how I call it, I would say every situation is a particular situation. Every client is a particular client. One of the biggest mistakes you can make in France is tell one French client that he's more or less the same as his neighbor or her neighbor, because they are all specific and they're all particular, and that's where this particularist approach comes in. France is particular also in terms of legislation. Don't mistake France for being equal with other European countries. France is Europe, and at the same time is France, so you have to be very careful about, for example, legislation for work, for social partners, for contract signing. You have a lot of particularist items which I could explain to you a little further if you want to, and I think we have a chance to discuss a little bit further later on. Let me move on to the second dimension, individualism, communitarianism. What you cover here is a lot of aspects, particularly in the communitarianism pole, where you look, for example, like something like given insurances or retirement plans, or what the French call convention collective. So you have to follow a certain legislation where you figure a big amount of employees under the same heading. You can't just go about and negotiate individually with anybody, just as much as you can't just lay off anybody if you don't have business. So please be very careful about this. Also, a lot of things to say about this, but we could go on later on. We will go on later on about this subject. The third dimension about equality and hierarchy. Yes, France is a hierarchical country. And you need to be very much aware of it. Some cultures don't have this aspect. They consider that people are equal and jobs are equal and positions are equal. But no, in France it is very important, and it is very important to give respect to those people who are high up on the hierarchy ladder. They can be politicians, they can be representatives of the state, they can be people coming out of Grande École, they can be people with famous names, but please keep in mind that France is a sort of triangle. Okay, and you live in this triangle and you work in this triangle where everybody knows their place, and there's only one person at the top, only one who has the power, and who has also the last responsibility for all the country. And he is called François Hollande at the moment. So we could go deeper into that as well if you want to, but it is something very important to keep in mind. When you go about, when you call somebody, when you want to create your network with people, it is very important to know on which hierarchical position these are placed. And one fact specific about hierarchy in France is it's organic, it's not systemic. Organic is, it is linked to people, individual people, and you have to take care of these individual people in all respects. For example, when you want to restructure your company, you will have to discuss people and what you are going to do with this individual person. We are not in a country that has invented lean management. Okay? Lean management is something that falls on France today, but it is not invented here, like a lot of other issues too. But it's important, first of all, to know. I will go very fast about number 4 because it is a little bit less important. Just one fact about it. People in France working or privately are always what we call in France entier. That is, they are always there with their professional and private selves. Now, the English language tells you a lot about what the English and the Americans think about these issues, because they have these separate words, and it means that you need to separate. In France, you don't. And this must make you very, very careful in terms of communication, because you can very, very easily hurt a French person, and they are very, very sensitive, and they will never forget and never forgive. So please be very careful about this. I'm going to be very straight because you asked me to give you hard facts, so I'm not trying to turn around the bush. Okay, number 5 is competencies and status, and you find that there is a link between number 2 and number 5, obviously, number 3 and number 5, because yes, if you do a recruitment, for example, or if you're looking for competencies, you look at the competencies and at the CV, but you are looking also at the status. You may want to hire somebody for the status they represent to open you doors in France, and then competencies become secondary. This is a fact, okay? So be careful about this issue, because when you come from a different culture where status is not an issue, where hierarchy is not an issue, you may make a lot of mistakes. My clients do, and they need a lot of help with that, so please watch out. Direct communication and indirect communication. Let me tell you that we are here in a world, you can see it about France, where we are halfway towards the indirect communication pole, and that includes a lot of things. First of all, talking about language, the French language is a diplomatic language, and there's a very good reason for that, because you can say anything and the contrary in the same word. So you can always use a paraphrase after that to get out of the situation. And one of my biggest advice to all of you is learn French, because if you want to get anywhere in France, you need to speak it, okay? You don't get around in France speaking English. Let me make this quite clear. It may be a start, but you have to be very fast, and some of my French boards are very hard on this. They give foreigners 3 months to learn the language. Now, I know that Chinese people are very strong in learning languages, and I have made encounters where I know that you are able to learn very, very fast and perfectly well. But please keep this in mind. If you really want to go anywhere in France, you need to speak the language. This is also the case because the major word and the major god, I would say, in France is called relationship. You can't create relationships with somebody if you go through a foreign language. Not as good as you should be, not as good as you could be, and this is important for your turnover, and this is important for your success. So please keep in mind that relationship is the god in France. You need to create it, you need to mend it, you need to take care of it, and you need to use many indirect situations, I'm back to the term indirect, to take care of this issue. And you always do it indirectly. This also includes how you can contact people. Usually you contact them in an indirect way. If you want to go for a direct, for example, hiring process or selling process, you will find it very, very difficult to get somebody on the line, because first of all, they need to know you. First of all, they need to know somebody who knows you to be able to talk about you, and then maybe they will take the line and answer you. The thing is that, for example, to get somebody's telephone number in France can be a real hassle, because once again you need to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and I'm sure Mr. Sauter will agree, before he gives me his mobile number, we need to get a lot closer. We need to have a very, very important relationship. And you see that this is different in terms with regards to other cultures where you get the mobile number first, right? So please be prepared to do a lot of lobbying and relationship creating to get there. Relations, men and women, yes, we have a glass ceiling in France of about 6%. Only 6% of women are in top jobs. I'm not going into details, but the thing is that in France, in management and in collaboration, you can use, in fact, anything. You can use beauty, you can use clothes, you can use indirect speech, you can use smiles. The most important for you in France to get somewhere is to be, as Monsieur Sauter said before, to be nice, and in French this is called sympa. If you are not sympa in France, nobody will work with you, right? This is to be quite clear. If a French person says about you that you are sympa, this is halfway, the door is open, okay? So please keep that in mind. If you get out of bed in the morning and you don't feel fine, don't call your clients. If you don't feel fine, if you don't feel ready to smile, don't call your suppliers, because you will get nowhere if you don't have the big smile and if you are not nice and perceived to be quelqu'un de sympa. I say it in French because if you say it in French, then it becomes really clear, and this is also a message to you to learn French. Concentration on the task and the human relations. You see here that we are halfway between two poles, and in a country where relationship is the key word, you understand very easily that you have to concentrate on these human relations, and concretely for people coming from different cultures where turnover is the most important word, be careful in France, because you don't get to the turnover, you don't get to the task, you don't get to the order if you don't have your relationship in place. Okay, there is no hard sell. There is no getting down to the task and just do it, you know. But there is a possibility to work if you have your relationship in place, and then it can be very fast and very efficient. But it needs to be perfect on the relationship side. The French are not the biggest risk takers in this world, as you can see here. They like to make sure before that there's a safety net somewhere. And if they don't have one around them, they will go and ask the government for some safety net, because the government in France has a very big role to play. This is also an important word for you. There is colbertism still working in France. That is, the French government intervenes for the best of the French nation and for the best of the French people, intervenes in companies for a couple of things which you may want to discuss about later. We have three aspects about time. You saw it this morning. It's proven. We are not on a linear time management line where time doesn't come back and where you have to be extremely punctual on the minute, but it is a flexible time concept where you need to catch up with what is going on, right? If the meeting starts 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes late, you have to adapt, not the other side, okay? And if you plan something for being very punctual and you have a feeling of loss in half an hour, please try and get calmer in yourselves or get some help, because you need it. We are in a French, in a Latin culture where time is what we call circular. In fact, it is coming back. It is something that is inside the French and they don't actually know about it, but time is not a linear issue. The French are present and future oriented, but you have to go through the past first. So there's no discussion like in Anglo-Saxon companies, and I would like to remind you of the Barack Obama campaign, forward. Just one word, targeting the future. In France, you always also have to include past events, past people, and sometimes we go as far back as Napoleon and Louis XIV because we love it, history, and we are still working and integrating these facts into our business life. We are polychronous people doing several things at the same time, and sometimes we do many things at the same time, and it can be harassment to you, especially if you come from monochronous cultures who like to do one thing at the same time. And I can prepare you, it's getting worse, okay? So please be prepared for polychrony. We have two last dimensions, which I don't want to dwell on too long, but they are becoming more and more important because France is taking care of ecology a lot more now than 10 years ago, and certainly in the future even more so. We need to find the right people for the right jobs when it comes to environment issues, and this is important for companies who are going to work in the environment sphere. So let me just close this rough run through the spider. If you would like to use it, and obviously in SAM International we're there to help you with all your management and collaboration issues. My colleague Alain Trémaud, who is here, and myself, we are ready to discuss these with you. But please keep in mind that you need to know these facts before you start working, because if you discover it later, it is already costing you money. And if you don't have too much money, my strong recommendation is you take care of that issue first. And I say that really without a financial interest, because I worked in big companies before creating SAM International with my colleagues, and I can tell you that the money that companies, big and small, are throwing out of the window because they don't know each other. They don't know each other well in terms of intercultural facts that you have to compose with, that you have to bridge. They are not as successful as they could be. And we wish you to be the most successful that you can be in France. And we are happy to welcome you here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. I summarize, you are sympa. No, I think your presentation was very exciting, and obviously we would like to have the German spider, but I think that's a secret.
It was the next slide. Would you like to see it?
Oh, you want it? I do. Okay.
Okay, please, Cécile.
Okay.
This is what I said about adaptation.
Ah,
Okay. This is the German spider because I was asked to do something different to have a comparison.